If you are watching this video, you are probably around 22 weeks pregnant. Today, we're going to talk about baby development, symptoms you might be feeling, when do you need to start thinking about prenatal classes, what kind of diet you should be focusing on, and we're also going to start talking about Braxton Hicks contractions. But first, if you're new here, my name is Diana. I'm a physician assistant and I specialize in women's health and gynecology. You're watching In the Pink, and if you're new here, In the Pink means in good health and spirit. So if you like being healthy and happy, click subscribe because you're in the right place. So at 22 weeks, you are 5 months and 2 weeks along, and you only have 18 weeks left to go. So your baby measures from the crown to the rump, which is your bottom, about 7.5 inches. But as we talked about in last week, we're now starting to measure the baby from the head to the heel, which is usually around 10.5 inches. Your baby will now weigh 1 pound, and they're about as big as an eggplant. They're starting to look more and more like a newborn baby. Their legs are longer than their arms, and their limbs are more proportionate to their body. And they really are quite cute at this point. Your 1 pound baby is really starting to move more and more, and you're gonna be feeling more and more movements at this point. And the baby can actually feel when you push on them, and sometimes it's really fun. You can actually push on your belly, and if the baby feels that push, they might kick or push right back. Sometimes when you're at your OB appointment, if your OB is listening for the heart tones or they're doing an ultrasound, the baby might kick that ultrasound probe, and you might be able to see that on ultrasound. You might be feeling a little nervous as you're watching the scale go up. Don't over stress about this. So your doctor is going to let you know if you need to adjust your habits if there's a concern. But just know that at this point, you're going to be gaining about 1/2 pound a week, give or take. There's a little bit of a variation, but 1/2 pound is about the average. So throughout your entire pregnancy, you should gain 25 to 35 pounds. And most of that is going to be in the second and the third trimester. Now, if you were overweight before your pregnancy, you should gain maybe anywhere from 15 to 25 pounds. But if you were underweight, you should gain more like 28 to 40 pounds. Now, these are generalized recommendations. Your OB will weigh you each visit, and he or she will let you know if you need to change anything. But if you've heard that old cliche, you can eat whatever you want because you're eating for two, that's just bad advice. Remember, your number 2 is only like this big and doesn't need that much right now. But you should give yourself an extra 300 calories a day. Now keep in mind that the kind of calories that you eat are important, so make each calorie count. So a good general goal is to eat 5 to 7 ounces of a protein source every day, like lean fishes, meats, poultry, eggs, and nuts. And a good rule of thumb is 3 ounces will fit in the palm of your hand. You'll also want to get about 1,000 milligrams of calcium a day. So you can take a supplement if you want, or you can get that much drinking low-fat milk or other dairy products. And you could also eat broccoli and leafy greens. You should also be trying to get some omega-3 fatty acids, which you can get with fish. Salmon is a good one, but you have to be careful with fish. Definitely include it in your diet if you like it, but you'll want to avoid too much. So no more than about 12 ounces a week, and avoid large fish that eat other fish. So like shark or swordfish. As for you, your uterus is now about 1 inch above your belly button. Now as your uterus gets bigger, you might notice that it gets a little bit harder to breathe sometimes. So the uterus can put pressure on your lungs as it gets bigger and bigger, and it makes it more difficult to take in a deep breath. The best thing that you can do is just sit up straight, and this allows more room for your lungs to fully inhale. Another thing that might happen as your uterus grows is you might develop stretch marks. And a lot of advertisers are going to try to convince you that you can prevent stretch marks by buying expensive creams, but the truth is, they're really not gonna work that well. And I know you don't wanna hear this, but whether or not you get stretch marks mainly comes down to your genetics. So if your mom has stretch marks, most likely you're gonna get them too, I'm sorry. But don't stress about stretch marks. The redness will lighten up after your baby is born to where they're barely noticeable. Plus, they are badges of honor that are a reminder of your precious little baby that you are bringing into the world. Is that cheesy? But I actually do still recommend using a moisturizer on your belly. It really helps to reduce the itching because your skin stretches. It tends to get really dry and it gets itchy and uncomfortable. I will link to my my favorite ones in the video description down below. You might start to notice Braxton Hicks contractions. We also call them practice contractions. So if you haven't noticed any, that's totally fine. Don't worry about it. But if you do notice them, it usually feels like a tightening of the muscles in the uterus. When this happens, your tummy's gonna feel really hard, but it shouldn't be painful and it shouldn't come regularly. They're usually very unpredictable, but sometimes they can feel quite strong, but don't worry about them. They're not dangerous. It's just your uterus practicing for labor. So if you are worried that the contractions that you're feeling are real contractions, then here's a few things to keep in mind. Braxton Hicks are irregular. They don't have a predictable pattern and they don't become stronger or more frequent over time. Also, Braxton Hicks contractions don't come with any other symptoms like gushing of fluid or vaginal bleeding. If you have any of those symptoms, you need to talk to your OB right away. Now is a good time to start thinking about prenatal classes. Now, you don't have to take them, of course, but especially if this is your first pregnancy, a prenatal class will help you to know what to do during labor, and they'll also help you to make important decisions about your labor plan and tons of other good information. They usually last about 6 weeks, or if you want, you can do crash courses over a weekend. They now offer online prenatal classes, which I think is a cool option, especially right now because we're still dealing with COVID. And I will link to a good online prenatal class in the video description down below. Check it out if you're interested. You still have some time before you need to start prenatal classes, but it's a good time to start thinking about it. But for now, enjoy this time during your second trimester. You're starting to show a little bit, you're feeling the baby move, which is so fun, and they're only gonna get stronger and more frequent from here. Now, by this point, most of you have already had your second trimester big comprehensive ultrasound, and so you probably know the gender of your baby and your official due date. And you know, I really love to hear about your pregnancies. Tell me in the video description if you're having a boy or a girl, when your due date is, and maybe even the names that you're considering. I'd love to hear all about your pregnancy, so put that in the comment section below. And also, it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe to my channel, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. It helps me to know if this is the type of content that you want me to continue to make. Now, I talk a lot about common pregnancy symptoms like back pain, heartburn, leg cramps, round ligament pain in some of my earlier first and second trimester pregnancy videos. Now, if you're new here and this is your first time to my channel, I highly recommend that you go back and check out some of those earlier videos. They offer a ton of good information, and I'm gonna put a link to that playlist right here. Click on that link and I will see you over there. Their pancreas are starting to secrete digestive enzymes, and they're starting to digest amniotic fluid. They're just practicing right now and are still getting all their nutrients from the placenta.